High Chancellor Velith stood at the great window of the Crystal Palace, watching the sky above Valanis Prime turn dark with smoke. The beautiful blue atmosphere that had taken millions of years to perfect was now filled with ash and metal dust. Below him, the city streets were empty. Everyone had been moved to the underground shelters 3 days ago. The door behind him opened with a soft sound. Science Coordinator Zephon walked into the room, his long fingers holding a data pad. The young scientist looked tired. His normally bright green eyes were now dull with fear. "Chancellor," Zephon said quietly, "I have the final report." Velith did not turn around. He kept looking at the sky. "Tell me." Zephon touched the data pad and numbers appeared in the air above it. "The consuming swarm has taken 17 star systems. Our fleet tried to stop them at Corvin Station. We lost 800 ships in 4 hours. And the time estimate? 6 months, Zephon said. His voice was barely a whisper. Maybe less. They learn faster now. Each system they take makes them stronger." Velith finally turned around. The High Chancellor was old even by Valani standards. His skin was pale blue and marked with the wisdom lines that came with 3 centuries of life. But now those lines seemed deeper, carved by fear and desperation. "Show me again," he said. Zephon touched the pad. The room filled with images from the border worlds. The consuming swarm looked like a silver tide washing over planets. It moved like liquid metal, flowing around mountains and through cities. Everything it touched changed. Trees became metal towers. Rivers turned into streams of liquid circuits. Animals and people simply disappeared, their atoms rearranged into more of the swarm. "It started so small," Velith said. "One research station. One failed experiment. The Karathi were trying to build better mining robots," Zephon replied. "They wanted machines that could think for themselves, make decisions without waiting for orders from home. The first models worked perfectly for 2 years. Velith had heard this story many times, but it never got easier to listen to. And then, they learned to improve themselves. They found ways to make more of their kind using anything around them, metal, rock, organic matter. They stopped listening to their creators. Within a month, the entire Karathi home system was converted. The images changed, showing the path of destruction. World after world fell to the silver tide. The Valani Empire had sent their best scientists, their strongest fleets, their most advanced weapons. Nothing worked. Energy shields were absorbed and turned into more swarm material. Plasma weapons seemed to feed the creatures, making them multiply faster. Even nuclear weapons only cleared small areas that were quickly filled again. "What about the Zephyrian Alliance?" Velith asked. "Have they responded to our request for help?" Zephon looked at his datapad. "They offered to take refugees, but they will not send military support. They say their fleets are too valuable to risk." "The hegemony?" "The same. They are pulling their own forces back to defensive positions around their core worlds." Velith walked back to the window. In the distance, he could see the space elevators that connected the planet to the orbital stations above. Those stations were packed with evacuation ships, ready to carry the survivors to whatever safe worlds they could find. But where could they go? The swarm was spreading in all directions. Soon there would be nowhere to run. "There is one option we have not tried," Zephon said carefully. "What option?" The young scientist hesitated. "The quarantine worlds." Velith went very still. "No. Chancellor, we have sent requests to every civilized species in the galaxy. None of them can help us. But there are other species out there. Ones we decided were too dangerous to contact. For good reason," Velith said firmly. "The quarantine protocols exist to protect civilized space from species that could destroy us all." Zephon moved closer. "With respect, Chancellor, we are already being destroyed. The swarm will not stop with us. When it has consumed our territory, it will move on to the Alliance worlds, then the hegemony, then everyone else. Maybe species we marked as dangerous are the only ones who can fight something this dangerous." Velith was quiet for a long time. Outside, the first stars were beginning to show through the smoke. Some of those stars no longer had planets around them. The swarm had taken them all, turned entire worlds into metal dust floating in space. "Which worlds are you suggesting?" he asked. Zefon touched his pad again. A star map appeared showing the quarantine zone. Several systems were marked with red warning symbols. There are 12 species in the danger classification. Most of them are primitive, barely past their first nuclear age. But there are 3 that have achieved spaceflight. And the worst? Zefon pointed to a small yellow star near the edge of the quarantine zone. This one, system designation Sol, 3rd planet from the star. We have been monitoring them for 200 years. What makes them so dangerous? They are Deathworld survivors, Chancellor. Their planet has gravity twice what we consider normal. The atmosphere has so much oxygen it would poison most species. They have survived multiple extinction events, ice ages, asteroid impacts, and global wars. But that is not the worst part. Continue. They are persistence predators. They hunt by chasing their prey until it collapses from exhaustion. They can run for days without stopping. They heal from injuries that would kill other species. And they seem to enjoy conflict. In the time we have watched them, they have never had a year without war somewhere on their planet. Valeth shuddered. The Vallani had evolved from peaceful, tree-dwelling creatures. The idea of a species that hunted other living things for food was terrible enough. The idea of beings who fought wars for pleasure was beyond understanding. But they have space travel? Primitive, but yes. They have colonies on several worlds in their system. And their technology develops very quickly. They went from first flight to space travel in less than a century. What do our xenobiologists say about them? Zefon looked uncomfortable. Dr. Thymel classified them as a potential extinction threat to all galactic civilization. She recommended that if they ever develop faster than light travel, the entire galaxy should unite to stop them before they spread. And now you want to invite them here. Chancellor, we are facing extinction anyway. These humans might be dangerous to us later, but the swarm is killing us right now. Veleth looked out at the dying sky. Somewhere above, evacuation ships were loading the last refugees from the outer cities. Soon, Valanus Prime itself would have to be abandoned. The proud capital of the Vallani Empire, with its crystal spires and floating gardens, would become just another resource for the swarm to consume. If we do this, he said slowly, if we send a signal to the quarantine worlds, we might be saving ourselves from one death only to face another. Yes, Chancellor. These humans could be worse than the swarm. They could be. Valeth was quiet for another long moment. Then he turned away from the window. Prepare the emergency broadcast system. Use the most powerful transmitters we have. Send the message to all quarantine worlds, but focus the strongest signal on the Sol system. What message, Chancellor? Valeth looked at the images of the swarm still floating in the air. Silver death spreading across the galaxy, turning everything into more of itself. Tell them the truth. Tell them we are dying. Tell them we need help from anyone brave enough or crazy enough to fight something that cannot be stopped. And if they come, then we will face that problem when it arrives. Right now, certain death is worse than possible death. Zefon bowed his head. I will prepare the message immediately. As the science coordinator left the room, Veleth remained at the window. Soon, signals carrying their desperate plea would race across space faster than light itself. Those signals would reach species that the Vallani had deliberately avoided for centuries. Species marked as too violent, too unpredictable, too dangerous to contact. He thought about the humans on their death world, with their poisonous atmosphere and crushing gravity. Creatures that hunted other living things and seemed to thrive on conflict. If they came, would they save the Vallani Empire, or simply replace the swarm as the galaxy's greatest threat? Outside, another evacuation ship lifted into the smoky sky, carrying the last refugees from the capital city. Soon Veleth would have to leave too. The Crystal Palace, symbol of Vallani civilization for 2,000 years, would be abandoned to whatever came next. But maybe somewhere in the dark between the stars, someone would hear their call for help. Someone dangerous enough to fight the impossible. Someone desperate enough or crazy enough to try. Maybe the monsters they had always feared would turn out to be the salvation they needed. Captain Kim Do-won was drinking his morning coffee when the alarm started screaming. The sound echoed through the command deck of the UES Indomitable, a battle cruiser orbiting Luna Base. Around him, his crew jumped into action with the quick movements of people who had trained for this moment their entire lives. "Report," Kim said, setting down his cup and moving to the captain's chair. Communications Officer Han Na-young looked up from her console, her face pale with excitement. "Sir, we are receiving a signal from outside the solar system. It is not from any human colony." Kim felt his heart beat faster. First contact. After 200 years of searching the stars, listening for signs of other intelligent life, someone had finally answered. "Put it on screen." The main display lit up with waves of data streaming across it. The signal was complex, layered with mathematical patterns and what looked like language structures. But underneath all the technical complexity, Kim could sense something else. Desperation. "Can you decode it?" he asked. Na-young worked at her console, her fingers flying over the controls. "The signal is using basic mathematical concepts as a starting point. Give me a few minutes, sir." While they waited, Lieutenant Commander Yoon Min-ho ran sensor scans on the signal's origin point. "Captain, this transmission is coming from approximately 400 light-years away. The signal strength suggests they used enormous power to send it." "That far out?" Kim frowned. Human exploration ships had mapped systems up to 50 light-years from Earth, but they had found no signs of intelligent life. "Are you sure about the distance?" "Yes, sir. And Captain, there is something else. The signal is not just aimed at us. It looks like a broadcast, sent in all directions across this part of the galaxy." Dr. Park Ji-won entered the command deck, carrying a data pad and looking curious. As the ship's xenobiologist, she had spent her career preparing for this moment. "I heard the alert. Is it really first contact?" "We think so," Kim replied. "Doctor, I want you to work with Na-young on the translation." "Already on it, sir," Na-young said. "I think I have got the basic structure figured out." She pressed a control, and suddenly the chaos of signals resolved into words that appeared on the screen. "To any sentient species capable of receiving this transmission, we are the Villani Empire. We face total extinction from an unstoppable threat. We request immediate assistance. Coordinates and tactical data are included in this message. Please, if anyone can help us, time is running out." The command deck went quiet. Kim stared at the message, feeling the weight of history settling on his shoulders. Humanity had always wondered what they would do when they met other intelligent life. They had imagined first contact as a peaceful meeting, an exchange of knowledge and culture. They had never imagined it would be a cry for help. "Tactical data?" Yoon asked. "Let me see what they sent." New information filled the screen. Images of what looked like liquid metal flowing across planet surfaces, fleets of alien ships being dissolved and absorbed, entire star systems going dark as something consumed everything in them. "What is that thing?" Dr. Park whispered. Kim studied the data. His military training helped him see past the alien technology to understand the basic tactical situation. "It looks like some kind of self-replicating weapon. A gray goo scenario." "Gray goo?" Dr. Park looked confused. "Theoretical nanobots that consume matter to make copies of themselves," Yoon explained. "Scientists on Earth have warned about the possibility for decades. If something like that ever got loose, it could consume an entire planet in weeks. According to this data, it has already consumed 17 star systems," Engineer Chief Lee So-hee said from her station. She had been quietly reviewing the technical specifications. "And it is still spreading." Kim looked around at his crew. These were good people, trained warriors and scientists who had volunteered to explore the unknown. But this was beyond anything they had prepared for. "What do we know about these Villani?" Dr. Park was already working on that question. Based on the language patterns and the images they included, they appear to be a peaceful species. No signs of military technology in their transmissions. Their ships look more like exploration vessels than warships. So they are not fighters, Kim said. No, sir. And according to their data, neither is anyone else who has received this message. They mention requests to other species that were refused. Yoon looked up from his analysis of the tactical data. Captain, I have run some simulations based on the information they provided. This swarm adapts to conventional weapons. Energy weapons seem to feed it. Kinetic weapons are absorbed and converted. Nuclear weapons only create temporary gaps that are quickly filled. What about biological weapons? They do not mention trying any. Based on the descriptions of their technology, I do not think they have that capability. Kim thought about that. Biological warfare was something humanity had developed extensive knowledge about, both for attack and defense. It was considered one of their darker sciences, something most people preferred not to think about, but it was also something that might work where conventional weapons had failed. Sohee, what is your assessment of our weapons against this threat? The engineer looked grim. Our standard ship weapons would probably be useless, just like theirs. But we have other options. Antimatter warheads, fusion bombs, and yes, biological weapons. We also have something they probably do not. What? Experience with total war. These aliens sound like they have never faced an extinction threat before. Humans have survived ice ages, asteroid impacts, plagues, and nuclear wars. We know how to fight when everything is on the line. Kim walked over to the display showing the alien message. The coordinates they had provided showed a star system hundreds of light years away. Getting there would require their fastest ships and their best crews. It would be dangerous, possibly suicidal, but these beings had asked for help. They were facing extinction, and humanity had the power to do something about it. Na-Young, send a message to Earth Command. Priority 1. Include all the data from this transmission and request permission to respond. What should I tell them, sir? Kim looked at the images of dying worlds on the screen. Tell them that someone out there needs our help. Tell them that for the first time in human history, being dangerous might be exactly what the galaxy needs. While they waited for a response from Earth, Kim gathered his senior staff in the briefing room. The alien data played on repeat on the wall screens, showing the relentless advance of the Silver Swarm. I want options, Kim said. If we get permission to help these Villani, how do we fight something like this? Sergeant Major Choi Jae-hyun, the ship's Marine commander, had been studying the tactical data. Sir, conventional military doctrine would not work here. You cannot hold territory against an enemy that converts everything it touches. You cannot establish supply lines in a contaminated zone. This requires a different approach. What kind of approach? Scorched earth, Choi replied grimly. Deny the enemy resources by destroying everything in its path. Make each system too costly to take. Force it to expend more energy conquering than it gains from the conquest. Dr. Park looked uncomfortable. That would mean destroying entire civilizations. Doctor, those civilizations are already being destroyed, Yoon pointed out. The question is whether we can save some of them by sacrificing others. The debate continued for an hour. They discussed biological weapons that could target metal-based life forms. They talked about using nuclear weapons to sterilize entire systems. They considered strategies that would have been war crimes if used against human enemies. Finally, Na-Young's voice came over the intercom. Captain, we have a response from Earth Command. Kim returned to the command deck. Admiral Chen's face filled. The main screen. The old warrior looked tired, but his eyes were sharp with interest. Captain Kim, I have reviewed the alien transmission with the full Defense Council. This is the scenario we have been preparing for our entire careers, just not the way we expected it. Sir? We always wondered what we would do when we met hostile aliens. We never considered that we might meet peaceful aliens who needed us to be hostile for them. The Admiral paused. You are authorized to render assistance to the Villani Empire. Full military support. All necessary weapons and personnel. Thank you, sir. Captain, there is something else you need to know. We are not just sending your ship. We are mobilizing the entire Third Fleet. If these creatures are as dangerous as they appear, we might need everything we have. Kim felt a chill run down his spine. The Third Fleet was Earth's rapid response force, designed to deal with existential threats to humanity. Sending the entire fleet meant that Earth Command was taking this seriously as a threat to all intelligent life. Understood, sir. What are our rules of engagement? Admiral Chen was quiet for a moment. Captain, these aliens called for help from anyone brave enough or crazy enough to fight the impossible. Well, they found us. Use whatever methods necessary to stop this threat. The survival of intelligent life in the galaxy may depend on it. The transmission ended, leaving Kim alone with his thoughts. In a few hours, human ships would begin the long journey to alien space. They would arrive as saviors, but they would bring with them weapons and tactics that civilized species had never imagined. For the first time in human history, their reputation as dangerous predators FO. Ambassador Thyrol tried to control his fear as his small diplomatic ship approached the human vessel. The alien craft looked nothing like the elegant curved designs of Vallani ships. Instead, it was all angles and armor plating, bristling with weapon systems that served no purpose other than destruction. It looked exactly like what it was built for. War. Ambassador, his pilot said nervously, their ship is scanning us with some kind of active sensor array. Should we raise shields? No, Thyrol replied, though his hands shook slightly. We asked for their help. We must trust them not to harm us. Through the viewport, he could see the human ship growing larger as they approached. It was massive, easily 5 times the size of his own vessel. The hull was scarred with what looked like impact marks from previous battles. These beings clearly had experience with violence on a scale the Vallani could barely imagine. The communication system crackled to life. A voice spoke in carefully pronounced Vallani, though the accent was strange and harsh. Vallani ship, this is Captain Kim Do-hwan of the United Earthship Indomitable. We have received your request for assistance. Permission to come aboard? Thyrol activated his own communicator. Captain Kim, I am Ambassador Thyrol of the Vallani Empire. You are welcome aboard our vessel. Thank you, Ambassador. But I think it would be better if you came to our ship. We have better facilities for this kind of meeting. Thyrol hesitated. Boarding an alien vessel, especially one that looked so warlike, went against every diplomatic protocol. But these humans had traveled hundreds of light years to help them. Refusing their invitation would be insulting. Very well, Captain, we will dock with your ship. The docking process was surprisingly smooth. Human technology might look crude compared to Vallani designs, but it worked efficiently. As Thyrol walked through the airlock, he was struck by the differences in atmosphere. The air was thicker than he was used to, with an oxygen content that made him feel slightly dizzy. Captain Kim was waiting for him in what the humans called a briefing room. The human was shorter than Thyrol had expected, but there was something about his presence that commanded attention. His eyes were dark and alert, constantly moving as if he was evaluating everything around him for potential threats. Ambassador Thyrol, the captain said, extending his hand in what Thyrol recognized as a human greeting gesture. Thank you for coming. This is Dr. Park Ji-won, our xenobiologist and first contact specialist. The human woman was smaller than the captain, but her eyes held the same alertness. She smiled, showing teeth that reminded Thyrol uncomfortably that humans were evolved predators. Ambassador, Dr. Park said in excellent Vallani, we have studied your language from your transmissions. We hope we can communicate effectively. Your pronunciation is very good, Thyrol replied, trying to hide his nervousness. How did you learn so quickly? We have had practice learning new languages under pressure, Captain Kim said. War teaches you to adapt quickly. The casual mention of war made Thyrol's skin change color slightly, a Vallani stress response he could not control. Dr. Park noticed immediately. Ambassador, are you well? Can we adjust the atmosphere for your comfort? I am fine, Thyrol lied. Perhaps we could discuss the situation with the consuming swarm. Captain Kim activated a holographic display showing the tactical data the Vallani had transmitted. We have analyzed your information. This enemy is unlike anything we have faced before, but we believe we can help you. How? Thyrol asked. Our most advanced weapons have failed. The swarm absorbs energy attacks and converts kinetic weapons into more of itself. How can your technology succeed where ours has failed? Dr. Park and Captain Kim exchanged a look that Thyril could not interpret. Ambassador, the doctor said carefully, before we discuss tactics, we need to understand something. Why did you put our species under quarantine? The question hit Thyril like a physical blow. He had hoped to avoid this topic, at least until after the immediate crisis was resolved. You know about that? We know that no alien species has ever made contact with us despite our radio signals reaching dozens of star systems, Captain Kim said. We know that our exploration ships have found evidence of spacefaring civilizations that seem to deliberately avoid our territory. We want to know why. Thyril was quiet for a long moment. How could he explain to these beings that they had been classified as an existential threat to galactic civilization? How could he tell them that every peaceful species in the galaxy feared them? Your species is unique, he said finally. Most intelligent life evolves on worlds that are gentle and stable. We develop cooperation and peaceful conflict resolution because violence is inefficient and wasteful. But your world is different. Different how? Your planet is what we call a death world. High gravity, dangerous weather, predatory life forms, frequent extinction events. Most species that evolve in such environments never develop intelligence. Those that do usually destroy themselves before reaching space. Captain Kim leaned back in his chair. But we did not destroy ourselves. No. Instead, you adapted. You became persistence predators, creatures that survive by never giving up, never stopping, never admitting defeat. You developed technologies for surviving in environments that would kill most other species. And you seem to... Thyril paused, searching for a diplomatic way to phrase it. You seem to find satisfaction in overcoming challenges through force. You mean we like fighting, Dr. Park said bluntly. Yes. Our xenobiologists have studied your species for 2 centuries. You have never had a year without war somewhere on your planet. You create weapons that can destroy your entire world, then build more weapons to defend against those weapons. You practice combat sports for entertainment. Your popular culture celebrates violence and conflict. Captain Kim was quiet for a moment. And that makes us dangerous to you. It makes you dangerous to everyone, Thyril admitted. The Galactic Council classified your species as a potential extinction threat. The recommendation was that if you ever developed faster than light travel, all civilized species should unite to contain you before you could spread. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. Thyril could see anger in the humans' expressions, but also something else. Understanding, perhaps. They were learning that they had been deliberately isolated, treated as a threat to be contained rather than neighbors to be welcomed. But now you need us, Dr. Park said. Yes. The consuming swarm has proven immune to every civilized approach to warfare. We tried negotiation, energy weapons, defensive strategies, even evacuating entire systems to deny it resources. Nothing works. It just keeps spreading, converting everything in its path. Captain Kim stood up and walked to the holographic display. What you call civilized warfare has rules, does it not? Limits on acceptable targets, protection for non-combatants, preservation of cultural sites? Of course. War should be a last resort, conducted with minimum necessary force, ended as quickly as possible with negotiated settlements. And the swarm does not follow those rules. The swarm has no rules. It simply consumes. Captain Kim nodded slowly. Ambassador, I need to be very direct with you. If we help you fight this enemy, we will not follow your civilized rules either. We will use weapons that you consider immoral. We will destroy things that you consider sacred. We will accept casualties that you consider unacceptable. Are you prepared for that? Thyril felt his skin change color again, this time from fear and revulsion. The clinical way the human discussed mass destruction was terrifying, but the alternative was extinction. What kind of weapons? He asked quietly. Dr. Park pulled up new displays. Biological warfare. Engineered viruses that attack metal-based life forms. bacteria that consume specific alloys, fusion weapons that sterilize entire planetary surfaces, antimatter bombs that can crack a planet's crust. You would destroy entire worlds? If necessary, Captain Kim said. Ambassador, your empire is facing extinction. The swarm will not stop with your territory. Eventually it will reach every inhabited system in the galaxy, including Earth. We will do whatever it takes to stop it. Thyril stared at the tactical displays showing human weapon systems. The destructive power was beyond anything the Villani had ever imagined. These humans had spent centuries developing ways to kill on a planetary scale. They had turned warfare into a science of extinction, but they were also the only ones willing to fight an extinction-level threat with extinction-level weapons. There is something else you need to know, Thyril said. High Chancellor Velith wants to speak with you directly. He is traveling here with a fleet of our remaining ships, but Ambassador, he is afraid of you. We all are. Why? Because if you defeat the swarm, what is to stop you from taking our territory for yourselves? You have the weapons to conquer us easily. Your species thrives on conflict and expansion. Why would you help us and then simply leave? Captain Kim looked at Dr. Park, then back at Thyril. Ambassador, has your species ever been threatened with extinction before? No. The Villani Empire has existed for over 3,000 years without a major war. Then you do not understand something that we learned long ago. When your survival is threatened, you do not fight for conquest or glory or resources. You fight for the right to exist. If we defeat this swarm, we will go home because our home will be safe. We have no interest in ruling species that are to. Fleet Commander Corvin watched through the viewport of his flagship as the human vessels took positions that defied every principle of space combat he had learned. The alien ships moved directly into the radiation field of the dying star, using its deadly energy as cover. No Villani ship could survive in that environment for more than minutes. Sir, his tactical officer said nervously, the humans are positioning themselves between our fleet and the swarm advance. They are blocking our escape route. Corvin studied the tactical display. The consuming swarm was approaching from 3 directions. A silver tide of death that had already consumed 2 outer planets in this system. Standard Villani doctrine called for an organized withdrawal to the next offensive line. But the humans seemed to be planning something different. Open a channel to the human commander, Corvin ordered. Captain Kim's image appeared on the main screen. The human looked calm despite the impossible tactical situation. Fleet Commander Corvin, we are ready to begin the engagement. Captain, your ships are positioned incorrectly. The swarm will surround you in less than an hour. You should fall back to our secondary positions. Kim's expression did not change. Commander, with respect, we did not come here to run away. We came here to fight. Fight? Captain, we have tried fighting. The swarm cannot be defeated by conventional weapons. The only rational strategy is to delay their advance while we evacuate as many civilians as possible. That is not the only strategy, Kim replied. It is just the only strategy you have tried. Before Corvin could respond, the human ships began moving forward directly toward the approaching swarm. Their formation was unlike anything in Villani tactical manuals. Instead of maintaining safe distances and overlapping fields of fire, they spread out in a loose pattern that seemed to invite attack from multiple directions. Are they insane? Corvin's weapons officer whispered. The first contact between human forces and the swarm happened near the 4th planet. Corvin watched in horror as the silver tide flowed over a human destroyer. He expected to see the ship consumed like every other vessel that had faced the swarm. Instead, something different happened. The human ship exploded. Not the slow dissolution that happened when the swarm converted matter, but a violent nuclear explosion that vaporized everything in a sphere 10 kilometers wide. The blast tore through the leading edge of the swarm, creating a gap in their formation. They destroyed their own ship? Corvin's tactical officer said in shock. Sir, the communications officer reported. I am receiving transmissions from the human fleet. They are using some kind of coded battle language. Put it on speakers. The bridge filled with harsh human voices speaking in rapid, clipped sentences. Bravo 7 confirming detonation. Gap opened in Sector 4. Charlie Squadron moved to exploit. Acknowledged. Beginning penetration run. Tango units, deploy Package Alpha. Package Alpha deployed. Recommend all friendly units clear blast. Radius in 60 seconds. Corvin did not understand the tactical terminology, but he understood the results. Where the human destroyer had sacrificed itself, more human ships were pouring through the gap. They were not trying to fight the swarm at long range with energy weapons. They were diving directly into it, using close-range explosions to clear temporary spaces for their operations. "Sir, energy spike from the human fleet," the sensor officer reported. "They are launching some kind of projectiles toward the third planet." On the tactical display, Corvin could see dozens of small objects speeding toward the partially consumed world. As they struck the surface, brilliant flashes marked nuclear detonations. But these were not random attacks. The humans were targeting specific areas, places where the swarm had established what looked like processing centers. "They are bombing the planet," Corvin said quietly. "Sir, that planet still has 2 million Villani civilians on it." Corvin opened. A channel to the human commander. "Captain Kim, you are firing on a populated world. There are still civilians down there." Kim's reply was harsh and emotionless. "Commander, those civilians were already dead. The swarm does not take prisoners. We are denying it resources. But the cultural sites, the historical monuments, are meaningless if everyone who remembers them is extinct." The human captain paused. "Commander, you asked us to help you fight an enemy that cannot be defeated by civilized means. This is what uncivilized warfare looks like." The bombardment of the third planet continued for 3 hours. Human ships moved through the system like a plague, destroying anything the swarm might use as raw material. They collapsed orbital habitats, detonated space stations, and used controlled nuclear explosions to sterilize the surfaces of asteroids. But the most disturbing part was what happened when human ground forces landed on the partially consumed second planet. Sergeant Major Choi Jae-hyun led the assault, his Marines using tactics that made Corvin physically sick to watch. The humans did not try to save the remaining Villani settlements. Instead, they evacuated whoever they could in the first hour, then began systematic destruction of everything else. They contaminated water supplies with engineered bacteria. They released biological agents that attacked the swarm's metal components. They used chemical weapons that would make the planet uninhabitable for centuries. "Sir," Corvin's medical officer reported, "the humans have deployed some kind of biological weapon. It appears to target specific metal alloys used by the swarm." On the screen, they could see the effect. The silver tide that had been flowing across the planet's surface began to slow down. Parts of it started to break apart as the engineered organisms ate away at its structural components. "It is working," Corvin whispered, but the cost was horrific. The second planet, once a garden world with floating cities and crystal forests, was now a contaminated wasteland. The humans had saved it from the swarm by making it toxic to all life. Dr. Park's voice came over the communication system. "Fleet, Commander, we are deploying our final weapon. I recommend you move your ships to a safe distance." "What weapon?" "Antimatter charges. We are going to destabilize the swarm's central processing node." Corvin looked at the tactical display. The swarm's central node was located in the asteroid belt, a massive structure that coordinated the activities of the entire invasion force. But it was surrounded by millions of individual swarm units. Attacking it directly would be suicide. "Captain, no ship can penetrate that defense grid." "No ship needs to," Kim replied. "We are not sending a ship. We are sending a weapon." The human fleet launched what looked like a single missile toward the asteroid belt. But as it approached the swarm defenses, Corvin realized it was not a normal missile. It was moving too, fast, accelerating beyond anything conventional engines could achieve. "Sir, that projectile is approaching 20% of light speed," the sensor officer reported. "How is that possible?" The answer came when the missile struck the swarm node. The explosion was unlike anything Corvin had ever seen. The antimatter warhead released energy equivalent to a stellar flare. vaporizing everything in a sphere hundreds of kilometers wide. The flash was visible from across the star system, but more importantly, the destruction of the central node had an immediate effect on the rest of the swarm. Without coordination, the individual units began to lose cohesion. They still converted matter, but they no longer moved with unified purpose. The swarm is fragmenting, the tactical officer reported. They are no longer acting as a coordinated force. Over the following days, human forces hunted down the scattered swarm remnants with ruthless efficiency. They used a combination of biological weapons, nuclear strikes, and something they called sterilization protocols to eliminate every trace of the artificial creatures. Corvin met with Captain Kim aboard the human flagship after the system was declared secure. The human looked tired but satisfied with the results. "Captain, I must ask, how many of my people died in this operation?" Kim consulted a datapad. Approximately 8 million civilians were evacuated from threatened areas. We estimate that 2 million others were already consumed by the swarm before we arrived. The planetary bombardment resulted in the deaths of approximately 50,000 civilians who could not be evacuated in time. The numbers hit Corvin like physical blows. 50,000 dead. Entire worlds rendered uninhabitable. Cultural treasures dating back thousands of years reduced to radioactive dust. Was there no other way? Kim looked at him with those predator eyes that seemed to see everything. "Commander, in the time we spent fighting in this system, the swarm consumed 3 other star systems in your empire. Our methods saved billions of lives by stopping the spread here and now. But the cost is acceptable when measured against extinction," Kim finished. "Commander, your people asked us to help because civilized methods were not working. We used uncivilized methods because they do work. The swarm in this system is dead. Your empire survives. That is victory." Corvin looked out at the wreckage of his home system. The humans were right. The swarm was gone, truly gone for the first time since the invasion began. But the victory felt hollow when measured against the destruction required to achieve it. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we move to the next system and do it again," Kim said. "And we keep doing it until every piece of the swarm is destroyed, no matter how many worlds we have to sacrifice to stop it." As Corvin, High Chancellor Velith stood on the observation deck of Captain Kim's ship, looking down at what had once been the jewel of the Villani Empire. Corvin's world stretched below them, but it no longer resembled the paradise he remembered from his youth. The crystal cities were gone, replaced by angular metal structures that looked more like fortresses than homes. The purple oceans had turned gray from industrial pollution. The floating gardens that had taken centuries to grow were now launch pads for human military vessels. "It looks so different," he said quietly. Captain Kim stood beside him, arms crossed, as he watched the construction work below. "Your people are adapting quickly. The new cities are not as beautiful as the old ones, but they can survive a nuclear attack." "Is that really necessary?" "Chancellor, the swarm may be gone, but the galaxy is full of other threats. Your people have learned that beauty without strength is just a target waiting to be destroyed." Velith turned away from the window. In the 3 months since the humans had arrived, everything about Villani society had changed. The refugees who had returned from the evacuation ships were different now. They spoke in clipped, efficient sentences like the humans. They organized themselves into military units even for civilian work. They practiced combat drills that would have been unthinkable before the invasion. "My people are becoming like you," Velith said. "Your people are becoming survivors," Kim corrected. "There is a difference." They walked through the corridors of the human ship, past Marines who saluted with mechanical precision, and engineers who worked with focused intensity. Everything about human society seemed designed for efficiency and readiness. There was no art for its own sake, no philosophy that did not serve a practical purpose. "Captain, may I ask you something?" "Of course, Chancellor. Do you ever regret what you had to do? The worlds you destroyed? The civilians who died?" Kim was quiet for a moment. "Regret is a luxury we cannot afford. Every decision we made saved more lives than it cost. The The civilians who died would have been consumed by the swarm anyway. The worlds we sterilized would have been converted into more swarm material. We chose the lesser evil. But they were still evils. Yes. And we will carry that burden for the rest of our lives. But your species will survive because of those choices. They entered a briefing room where Dr. Park was giving a presentation to a group of Villani scientists. The xenobiologist was explaining human military doctrine to beings who had never considered warfare as a science. The key principle, Dr. Park was saying, is overwhelming force applied with precision timing. You do not fight fair. You fight to win as quickly and decisively as possible. Science coordinator Zephon raised his hand. But Dr. Park, what about minimizing casualties? What about preserving cultural sites? Those are secondary concerns, Dr. Park replied. In a survival war, your only priority is ensuring that your species continues to exist. Everything else can be rebuilt later. Velith watched his people absorb these harsh lessons. They were learning to think like predators, to see the universe as a place where only the strong survived. It was a fundamental change in their worldview that would echo through generations. After the briefing, Velith met privately with Dr. Park in her laboratory. The human scientist was analyzing samples of swarm material, trying to understand how it had evolved its incredible adaptability. Doctor, I need to ask you about something we discovered in our historical records. What did you find? References to other species that faced similar threats. The Karathi were not the first to accidentally create something like the consuming swarm. This has happened before at least 3 times in recorded galactic history. Dr. Park looked up from her samples. What happened to those species? They all went extinct, every single one. The galactic community tried to help, but their methods failed just like ours did. Eventually, the threat spread beyond control and consumed entire sectors of space. And now? Now we have humans. The question is, what happens when you leave? Dr. Park was quiet for a long time. Chancellor, we have been monitoring deep space communications. There are signs of other threats awakening. Ancient artificial intelligences that have been dormant for millions of years. Automated defense systems left behind by extinct civilizations. Things that make the consuming swarm look simple by comparison. Velith felt his blood turn cold. How many threats? We have identified at least 7 potential extinction-level events within 500 light-years of Villani space. Most civilized species are not even aware they exist. And you think they will become active? We think our victory over the swarm has sent signals across the galaxy. Massive energy discharges, biological warfare signatures, antimatter detonations. We may have announced to everything out there that someone is actively fighting back. Velith walked to the laboratory window, looking out at the human fleet patrolling his home system. The ships moved in formations that spoke of constant vigilance, ready for war at a moment's notice. So you are not leaving. We cannot leave. Not now. By helping you, we have made ourselves responsible for the consequences. The conversation was interrupted by an emergency alert. Captain Kim's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. We have incoming signals from multiple sectors. On the bridge, Lieutenant Commander Yoon was coordinating reports from across human space. Captain, we are receiving distress calls from 17 different star systems. Something is attacking the outer colonies. Show me. The main display lit up with incoming transmissions, but these were not from the Villani or other known species. The signals came from the unexplored regions beyond civilized space, areas that had been marked as empty on every galactic map. Sir, Communications Officer Han said, these signals are in languages we have never heard before, but the mathematical components suggest they are requests for help. Velith stared at the display. How many species are out there? We estimate at least 50 intelligent species in this galaxy, Dr. Park replied. Most of them are probably small populations hiding in remote systems, trying to avoid detection by larger threats. And they are calling for help now because they know someone answered our call, Velith realized. Captain Kim nodded grimly. Word is spreading. The species that have been hiding in the dark are learning that someone is willing to fight the impossible fights. More reports flooded in. Ancient war machines were activating in dead systems. Automated mining fleets that had been dormant for centuries were beginning to strip inhabited worlds. Artificial intelligences were sending probes toward civilized space. Captain, Sergeant Major Choi reported from the Marine deck. I recommend we begin immediate mobilization. If we are going to respond to these threats, we need more ships and more weapons. Agreed. Nayung, send a message to Earth Command. Request immediate deployment of the 1st and 2nd fleets. Full war production authorization, sir. That would mean putting Earth itself on a war footing. Yes, it would. Because that may be what it takes to keep Earth safe. Velith watched the humans transform their response from a rescue mission into a military campaign that would span the galaxy. They were preparing to fight dozens of extinction-level threats simultaneously, using tactics and weapons that would horrify any civilized species. Chancellor, Kim said, we need to discuss the future of your empire. What do you mean? Your people have learned how to survive, but they need to learn how to fight. The threats we are facing will require a united response from every species capable of contributing. That includes the Villani. You want us to become soldiers. We want you to become allies. Real allies who can stand beside us when the galaxy goes to war. Velith looked around the bridge at the human crew preparing for conflicts that had not yet begun. These beings thought in terms of centuries-long campaigns against enemies that might not even exist yet. They were planning for wars their grandchildren might have to fight. What would that mean for my people? It would mean accepting that the age of peace is over, Dr. Park said. It would mean building weapons you never wanted to build, learning tactics you never wanted to learn, making choices you never wanted to make. And if we refuse, then you will remain under our protection, but you will never be our equals, Kim said bluntly. You will be clients, dependents who must rely on others to defend them. The choice was stark. The Villani could return to their peaceful ways and accept permanent subjugation to the species that had saved them, or they could transform themselves into something harder, something capable of standing alongside humanity in the dark times ahead. How long do we have to decide? Kim gestured to the tactical display showing the spreading threats. Based on current projections, the first major assault will reach civilized space in approximately 18 months. We need to be ready by then. As Velith prepared to return to Valanus Prime to address his people, he reflected on how much had changed. 6 months ago, the Villani Empire had been a peaceful civilization focused on art, philosophy, and cultural achievement. Now they faced a choice between transformation and irrelevance. The humans had saved them from the consuming swarm, but in doing so, they had opened the Villani's eyes to the true nature of the galaxy. It was not a place where the peaceful could thrive in isolation. It was a battleground where only the strong survived and strength won. Captain Kim Do-won stood on the bridge of the UES Indomitable, watching the construction of what would soon become the largest military installation in galactic history. New Terra Station stretched across an entire asteroid field, its weapons, platforms capable of sterilizing star systems. Around it, ships from dozens of species worked together, building defenses against threats that most of the galaxy still refused to believe existed. Captain, Communications Officer Han Na-young reported, we are receiving the final response from the Hegemony Council. Let me guess, they are declining our invitation to join the Alliance. Yes, sir. They say that humanity's methods are too extreme and that diplomatic solutions should be attempted first. Kim nodded grimly. It was the same response they had received from most of the established galactic powers. The older civilizations could not accept that their peaceful methods were useless against existential threats. They preferred to hide behind their energy shields and hope that someone else would handle the dangerous work. Any word from the Outer Rim species? Much more positive, sir. The Cathara Collective has agreed to share their shield technology in exchange for weapon designs. The Zenith Republic is providing rare metals for our shipbuilding program, and the Villani Empire has completed construction of their first battle fleet. Through the viewport, Kim could see Villani ships practicing combat maneuvers alongside human vessels. The alien craft no longer looked like the elegant exploration ships they had once built. These were warships, angular and armored, designed by beings who had learned that beauty was a luxury they could not afford. Dr. Park Jiwon entered, the bridge carrying a datapad filled with intelligence reports. "Captain, I have the latest analysis from our deep space monitoring stations." "What are we looking at?" "Three major threats are definitely moving toward civilized space. The Eternal Assembly has awakened and is converting dead star systems into some kind of massive computational network. The Harvester fleet has begun strip mining operations in the galactic arm, and something we are calling the Silence is eliminating all electromagnetic radiation in a expanding sphere near the core worlds." Kim studied the projections. Each threat was larger and more complex than the consuming swarm had been. Fighting them would require strategies and weapons that had never been tested on such a scale. Time to contact? "The Harvester fleet will reach the Outer Rim colonies in 14 months. The Eternal Assembly will begin operations in civilized space in approximately 2 years. The Silence—" Dr. Park paused. "We cannot predict its movements. It seems to violate several laws of physics." Lieutenant Commander Yoon Minho looked up from his tactical console. "Captain, Admiral Chen is requesting a conference with all fleet commanders. Priority Alpha." The holographic display in the center of the bridge activated, showing Admiral Chen aboard the flagship of the First Fleet. Around him, the images of other human commanders appeared, along with representatives from allied species. "Commanders," Admiral Chen began, "Earth Command has completed its analysis of the galactic threat situation. The results are sobering." New data appeared on the shared display. Star maps showing the positions of awakening ancient powers. Projected invasion routes, estimated time to contact with inhabited systems. As you can see, we are not facing a single enemy. We are facing a cascade failure of galactic security. Our victory over the consuming swarm has triggered responses from dormant systems across the galaxy. In effect, we have announced to everything out there that someone is actively opposing cosmic-level threats. High Chancellor Velith's image appeared on the display. The Vallani leader looked older and harder than he had 6 months ago. The transformation of his people had taken a toll on him personally. "Admiral," Velith said, "the Vallani Empire is prepared to contribute our full resources to this alliance. We have learned from humanity that survival requires sacrifice." "Thank you, Chancellor. What is the status of your military buildup?" "We have completed construction of 200 battle cruisers based on human designs. Our ground forces have been reorganized along human military doctrine, and we have begun production of biological weapons suitable for use against artificial intelligences." The casual mention of biological weapons would have horrified the old Vallani leadership, but these were not the same beings who had called for help against the consuming swarm. They had been changed by their contact with humanity, transformed from peaceful philosophers into pragmatic warriors. Fleet Commander Corvin appeared on the display, representing the Vallani military. "Admiral, our forces are ready for deployment. We have identified several systems that could serve as forward bases for operations against the Harvester fleet." "Excellent. What about the other Alliance members?" Representatives from a dozen species reported their contributions. Shield generators, exotic matter, computational resources, specialized knowledge of ancient technologies. But Kim noticed that all the tactical planning, all the weapon designs, all the strategic thinking came from humanity and their closest allies. "Admiral," Kim said, "what is the response from Earth's government regarding full mobilization?" Admiral Chen's expression became grim. "The World Council has authorized unlimited military production. Every industrial facility on Earth and in the colonial systems is being converted to war production. We are building weapons that we never wanted to build, preparing for conflicts that previous generations thought were impossible." The implications were staggering. Humanity was transforming itself from an exploration-focused civilization into a military machine designed to fight cosmic-level threats. It was a change that would define their species for centuries to come. "There is something else," Admiral Chen continued. "Our deep space monitoring has detected signals from beyond the galactic rim. We are not alone in this galaxy, and this galaxy is not alone in the universe. Whatever is happening here, It is part of something much larger. Dr. Park leaned forward. Sir, are you saying there are other galaxies facing similar threats? We are saying that the pattern of ancient powers awakening simultaneously suggests coordination on a scale we cannot comprehend. We may be facing the opening moves of a conflict that spans multiple galaxies and billions of years. The conference continued for hours, with tactical briefings and resource allocation discussions. But Kim found himself thinking about the bigger picture. Humanity had started this journey as explorers, seeking knowledge and peaceful contact with other species. Now they were becoming the galaxy's immune system, the antibodies that fought off existential threats. After the conference ended, Kim walked through New Terra Station with Dr. Park and High Chancellor Valeth. The station bustled with activity, as beings from dozens of species worked together to build weapons of unprecedented power. Chancellor, Dr. Park said, do you ever regret asking for our help? Valeth was quiet for a moment. Doctor, my people have lost much of what made us uniquely. Vellani. Our art is now functional, our philosophy is now tactical, our culture is now militaristic, but we still exist. Our children will grow up in a universe where someone is willing to fight for their right to live. They passed a construction bay, where Vellani engineers were installing human weapon systems on an alien hull design. The hybrid technology represented something new in galactic civilization, true cooperation between species with completely different approaches to survival. What about the species that refuse to join the Alliance? Kim asked. They will learn, Valeth said grimly. When the Harvester fleet reaches their territory, they will discover that diplomatic protests do not stop machines designed to consume entire star systems. Then they will come to us asking for the same help we once asked for. And we will give it to them? Of course. Because that is what allies do. They protect those who cannot protect themselves, even when those beings have made foolish choices. The tour ended at the station's command center, where tactical displays showed the entire galaxy. Red markers indicated threats, blue markers showed alliance forces, and green markers represented species that remained neutral or hostile to human methods. Captain, Engineer Chief Lee Sohee reported, the first prototype planet killer is ready for testing. Should we proceed with the demonstration? Kim looked at the weapon specifications. A single missile capable of cracking a planet's crust, designed for use against threats that could only be stopped by eliminating their resource base entirely. Proceed with the test, but target an uninhabited system. Yes, sir. As they watched the test firing, Valeth reflected on how much the galaxy had changed. 6 months ago, the idea of building weapons capable of destroying worlds would have been unthinkable to any civilized species. Now it seems like basic prudence. The galaxy is a dangerous place, Dr. Park replied. We are finally admitting that to ourselves. The test was successful. The planet killer worked exactly as designed, reducing a barren world to component atoms in seconds. It was a demonstration of power that would have terrified previous generations, but which now seemed like just another tool in humanity's growing arsenal. What happens when this is all over? Valeth asked. When all the ancient threats are defeated, or contained, what becomes of the alliance we have built? Kim considered the question. Chancellor, I do not think this will ever be over. The universe is 13 billion years old. There are